And we are coming to you at 5 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, as we now are in the month of November, specifically November 4th, in the year 2023. I'm sitting in my car at the moment, waiting for the coffee shop to open up, and this is the time to talk to you again about the dark feminine rising. Now that I've already talked to you about the problems with many men and women that have gone overseas to engage in a slaughter in a day and age in which the conspiracy theory movement does not recognize the errors of their ways, in a day and age in which the mainstream left doesn't care either. And so instead of you listening to this, seeing yourself as a woman or a man, I would recommend that you visualize yourself as a human being, as a spirit that's animating a gender, okay? So see yourself as potentially within an advanced spirit or a spirit or soul that has the potential of becoming advanced, who is simply having the experience as, quote, a male or a female. As for the other genders, that's for other radio shows and talk shows that fit into that narrative. Okay, we are talking about men and women. And so when you hear me talk about the dark feminine rising, don't think that this doesn't involve you as a man, as a male. This is not an attack on women and actual misogynists, actual wife beaters, actual men that destroy the lives of women and children. They have plenty of female mates in their lives. And so women are not naturally more loving or more compassionate to the victims of war or to my plight just because they are women. In fact, it appears that there are far more men that have compassion for me and my message than women. Even if I speak about the ways in which this world does abuse women and does in some ways set women up for catastrophic situations, which our current system is. Our current system has totally misled women into thinking that this technological New World Order grid has their best interest at heart. With all the cell phones, with all the social media, and the new digital currency that's coming, in many ways, women have become married to the state or married to big tech. You can take a look at the OnlyFans accounts that are out there. It has replaced the family unit. And as someone that has come from a broken home, who has been abused by an angry white woman who involved herself in the New Age movement, who has been abused by a psychopathic Afghani immigrant who came over and enjoyed the best of America during the Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin, Quarter Flash, Pink Floyd days in the late 60s, early 70s, my dad lived a good life. And as far as I'm concerned, he's not very grateful for that and doesn't care about his son. And so when I talk about the dark feminine rising, which is the increase in women that have that bloodlust, that are brainwashed by the modern system, where in the past, before big tech, before the mainstream media, women and men maybe thought organically with their brains, although they were never perfect, right? Because if they were perfect, they would have never been born in human form. And so even if we go back 1,000 years, 1,500 years, 2,000 years, unless we go back way before the era of the patriarch or way before the era of the modern religions oppressed so many, we are still going to find corrupt human beings that turn the other way when murderous, psychopathic individuals take power and kill people. But we can see humans in the past, whether we look at old Europe or the Native Americans, or even the Islamic world before the rise of some of these evil governments, if we go back far enough, we can see a harmony between the humans and the earth. We could see the existence of the family unit when it was necessary to remain a family. We could see the existence of the tribe, in which people in a community worked together and they saw the value of good men and good women. They were more than just dollar signs. They were more than just conspiracy theorists that entertain people on the web. And as I said before in a recent YouTube video, Conspiracy theorists, by and large, with very few exceptions, are not going to be and want to be your friends. They're going to be preoccupied. Even if they claim that they have turned away from Alex Jones and others, they still may have a pre-programming by either the dominant right or dominant left talking points and way of looking at reality. It's like I can be judged by people in the church by not believing everything that they say or the way in which they interpret the Bible. And I also might be judged by some people by invoking the power of Jesus Christ in a spiritual way, when in fact, many people have used the image of Jesus Christ to promote genocide and war without taking accountability for their actions. And so as we get closer to the human trafficking epidemic, which is going to super exceed anything that you have ever heard about or read about in the news, we're talking about what is to come after the collapse of America. And it is somewhat of a slow collapse. But if we were to experience massive solar flares that take out the grid, even if that might rescue humanity from the robot apocalypse, it won't be a pretty scenario in what happens immediately. It would take time, folks. It would take time for humanity to recalibrate itself to a natural homesteading, off-grid, if you will, way of life. It would not be a quick turnaround. It would be very, very painful, and not everybody would make it. But if we were to experience also an EMP and other major events that take out the grid, other than a solar event, we would likely see major atrocities following that. And so there's a reason why you don't see movies like that warning people about these potentials. And you don't see Hollywood encouraging good men to be good men. As I said in videos that I made over the years, which unfortunately I privated, but they'll be back. They'll be back in the winter. Good men are leaving mainstream society. Good men, many of them have been pushed out of mainstream society. Maybe some good women as well. But what does it mean to be a good man or a woman? We each have our own definitions. It does not mean, in my opinion, a good lay, a good fuck, having a lot of money, being super attractive, being super strong, being super entertaining, or super intelligent. A good man or a good woman, A, has a decent soul that believes in the true God of this reality, who doesn't engage in murder or supporting murder. More so, they push against the system of apathy that allows so many people to be killed. And they support others that are marginalized, that will also be brave enough, strong enough in a spiritual sense, not a bodybuilder sense, but in a spiritual sense to have the bravery and courage to speak against the evils of this world. And so this would apply 500 years ago in old Europe, which I may have had some lifetimes in, as some people have told me, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or maybe even longer. And so this plight that humanity has been in, we've been in this situation for a long, long time. So as I've been saying for 10 years, 15 years, for a long time now, I don't believe that there's going to be a moment where people wake up. That's not what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to see compassion rise in the men and women of today's day and age. I'm waiting to see them rise above the mind slave mentality and ideology to either enslave their partner or to enslave others in like a workplace atmosphere or a career or a job, or the other aspect of the mind slave reality where they allow others to enslave them. And there's a lot of men and women that not only try to enslave others without admitting it, but they also allow others to enslave them. Even if they don't think that they're enslaved, they may be energetically co-opted from the money that they take from the corporations that they work for the military that they work for the military men and women that they fornicate with. And so we have a big, big problem with today's men and women that are lustful, that will lay down with and bed down with and give pleasure to other human beings that really don't deserve to be touched. And I don't think that I've articulated this in this way. Like, we already talked about how many women are with bad men that hurt people, that kill people. And some of them might think that they're flower children. Flowers in her hair, flowers everywhere. I get lots of requests for karaoke. I love the flower girl, na 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 na. We see a lot of hypocrites. People that act like they're super conscious, yet the men that they date do nothing to wake the world up because their DNA is not turned on by that. So what I'm talking to you now, which I haven't mentioned before, is that there's a lot of men out there that are willing to bed down with because they're lustful, because they in some cases, when the solar flares increase, their desire to procreate increases, even if they're naive to the effects of the solar flares and the coronal mass ejections and the geomagnetic storms. I'm not naive. I know how it impacts my body, how it increases physical desire, how it increases irritation and aggression, and we need to mindfully rechannel these energies, this prana, this chi, this ki, rather than just dumping it in random places and in random people. And so there should be a greater movement of good men that expect more from the women that they date. Okay, so they should expect more than just physical beauty. They should just expect more from a woman than her willingness to spread her legs, to invite in the sexual intercourse reality. Okay, so we've talked about the dark masculine rising at great lengths. And this is just reminding you of that. Many men need to rise above their dark self. There's nothing wrong with having sexual desire. But if you are constantly engaging yourself with unclean women who don't want to work to make the world a better way, a better place outside of the dominant left-right paradigm, then they will continue to exchange energies with humans that may harbor unclean spirits. You're going to find a lot of them in the New Age movement. You're going to find a lot of them on dating websites. And even though I would love to have the company of a woman, I would really enjoy intellectual company. I would really enjoy, for example, the company of relatives, either on my mother's side or father's side, to say, Alex Ansary, we're proud that we're related to you. We're proud, for example, it would be great if my father's ancestry, the women in my father's family, would say, Alex, even though your white mother left our uncle, right, my father, right, we still accept you for you, and we appreciate you shining the light on the war crimes and atrocities in your father's country. Thank you, cousin. Thank you. High five. So you got to understand, when we talk about dark feminine rising, we're not talking about things from a MGTOW misogynist, anti-white knight perspective. This is not MGTOW content. This is not made for MGTOW content consumers. There's one individual that said he's on the spiritual path who found me through MGTOW, but that's one. That's one out of 50 to several 100,000 subscribers. Okay, so I'm hoping that that individual knows that he's less than 0.01% of the MGTOW consumer base, while the vast majority of them just hate women or are angry with women because they don't have that physical affection in their lives. And to be honest with you, I don't want those men in my audience that are at the lower levels, the resentment towards women levels over them not getting something from women. What I'm talking to you about is something that only advanced souls are going to understand. We're talking about the dark feminine rising in our society, in which even relatives in my father's side of the family don't see the good in me and are still infected by the jinn in their own family line. The jinn that puts the voices in the head. Alex is no good. He didn't obey his father. My father is a psychopath. Why would I obey him? He's worked alongside the U.S. military for years. He doesn't care about the victims of war. He cares more about dead U.S. service members, from what I gather from his Facebook posts. He doesn't have the bravery and guts to call out the evil that has destroyed his country. He doesn't have the guts and bravery to call out the truth about 9/11. And so when I talk about dark feminine rising, I'm speaking from a non-sexual perspective, a spiritual perspective, looking at the totality of the human species. Having already talked about the dark masculine and the many brainwashed men out there, right? There's no excuse if we were on our way to higher consciousness, which we're not, folks. We're going the opposite way. That's why many women are killing themselves in alarming numbers after 2010 as computer processing power went up, up, up and away, and quantum power went up, up and away. All of a sudden, just as I predicted on Facebook 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there would be an epidemic of suicides by 2020. And so women that are incarnated into this realm, incarnating, are not, in many cases, being born to loving parents. And in many cases, they don't have both parents. Neither did I. And so they're being born into not a world that's on its way to ascending, as the New Agers would have you believe, but they're on their way to incarnating into a world in which there's massive death and destruction, in which the feminine is under attack. And as I told you, I criticize the adult industry in a way that no human does. And AI may be hiding from you criticisms of the adult industry also. They will show you surface level criticism from Exodus Cry, which is a pro-Trump evangelical organization. So it plays up the white savior complex, plays up the dark-skinned Arabic boogeyman. When the reality is, these porno websites are not owned by Muslims, and they promote Nephilim, fallen angel, demonic, alien human relationships. And there is nothing normal about that. There is nothing normal about women in our society. Since 2019, it is a statistical fact having a greater interest in that type of pornography and other types of pornography. People say that we've always had pornography in our society. I say that that is a lie. There may have been artistic renderings of sexuality in the 50s, in the period of 100 years ago, and even in Japan, there was the quote-unquote hentai artwork, for whatever reason, in the early 19th century and 18th century. And there was massive abuse of the women that they called witches in old Europe. People want to act like Europeans are so superior when in fact they have their own blood, lust, and darkness. As we can see from their persecution of the Gnostics and those that operated outside of the church. And so what I'm telling you is, this is a sign of dark feminine rising for healthy sexuality and healthy relationships and strong family units. So as they break up the family, as they push us away from a agrarian, grow your own food, know your neighbor, work with your neighbor in the event of an emergency to protect your women, to protect your children, working within a community structure. We have been herded into these cities, and they have brought us all of these smartphones, which are manipulating people with evil spirits. And so there's many people that have written books about psychic self-defense many, many years ago, but they don't talk about the internet. And the reality is, a lot of people that are going to consume my content, a lot of women that are going to consume my content on social media and through the internet, they're going to be under a form of demonic mind control to have zero compassion for me. And so when I went back to Portland, Oregon in 2014, and I spoke up for the homeless, and I spoke out against right-wing ideology, and I spoke out against Islamophobia, right? And I spoke out against abuse of women, and I spoke out against the sex industry, and I spoke out against many, many things. If women were truly loving and part of a collective shift in consciousness, there is no reason in hell, and that would be hell on earth, hell. There is no reason that they would not help me. And there is no reason that they would not get on Facebook or use their email or use their smartphone, although it hasn't made society very smart. They would use their iPhone to talk to their network of Portland, Oregon residents and say, this guy, Alex Ansary, is of the bloodline that's being exterminated, even though he's not Muslim and he's not a misogynist, and he doesn't believe in owning women like maybe some of his ancestors and his European ancestors, don't forget that. He's a good man. Instead, I know the true nature of human consciousness, and I am here, ladies and gentlemen, to report. So instead of people giving themselves a pat on their back, saying, when are people going to wake up, as if humanity is on the verge of waking up, instead of those things taking place, we're seeing a great apathy spreading across the land. In a conscious day and age, women and men would support me standing against genocide, especially those that profess to call themselves loving liberal leftists. I'm okay with people that are left-leaning supporting my work, as long as they acknowledge that there is white supremacy on the left and that it does live in the hearts and minds and bodies of many left-leaning white women. To only blame right-wing men that support Trump for white supremacy is to spit in my face and completely deny my lived experience. I was raised, ladies and gentlemen, in a white supremacist household, taken away from my father. Not that I should have been with my father. You know, he would make threats as a child to kidnap me from my mother and take me away to a foreign country to fight the Russians. That's what I was told that he said in the early 80s. So he was a psychopathic drunk. But because my father is on the dark side, because he does serve Satan's kingdom, right? I told you that he later worked for the U.S. military. Not as a trigger puller, but helping in other ways. Because my father and others do serve the dark side, like Darth Vader. Hence, I am Luke Skywalker in spirit for years, battling my father that I see as Darth Vader. And now, as he gets closer to death, I attempt to take the helmet off to look into his eyes to see if there is any good left. And in the exchanges that we have had over social media and Facebook, as I took him off block after he was on block for 15 years to see if he was still an abusive monster. And the truth is, he still is an abusive monster. I wrote him a 5-page letter reminding him that in his Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin days of Portland, Oregon, same thing with half Anglo, half Afghani, famous author Tamim Ansary, which you can learn about online and see all the books that he's written. They lived in old Portland in the 70s and 80s and lived very good lives before 9/11. But see, I wrote him a long letter explaining this to him, and he didn't reply to that letter. And he had the gall to tell me that my letter put him to sleep. And I don't know what just happened here. Looks like my car stopped working. Looks like I'm back in action. So we're getting back to our main topic, but I need to tell you about my father, right? So you understand the dark feminine, right? So you get out of your gender complex, and when you understand, when I talk about the dark feminine rising, I'm talking about what happened to men and women in our society. Because we have a masculine and a feminine within us. You've heard this before from New Agers. You've heard of the sacred masculine. You've heard of the sacred feminine. So we're getting to that, right? And you should already be intelligent enough to know what I'm talking about if you're bothering to hit play on my podcast. And so it really hurts when my father says to me, your letter put me to sleep, when I explained to him that he had a different immigrant experience. And his son, who's an American, who's not Muslim, who's not a foreigner, is treated more like a foreigner from a foreign land than he was, because he serves the dark side. That's what I'm telling you. He's not a good man. And so because he's not a good man, because he doesn't stand up for the victims of war, because he worships money, not God, even if he thinks he's Muslim. No alcoholic like my father is a Muslim. You can't be a Muslim and follow God and be an abusive drunk. And so as a result of that, he has been rewarded financially with nice homes, with nice cars, with many, many female relatives of his bloodline that love him and see him as the patriarch, as the ruler, as the archon of the family unit, being the oldest male of his immediate family. And so he is looked towards as a authority figure, despite the fact that he has received money from a Western imperialistic system that has oppressed his people. And so, if there was a higher state of consciousness rising in today's women, for example, like my father's family, even though they have it in their tradition to be submissive to male domination, they would hear the cries of Alex Ansary. They would hear and respond to the tears of Alex Ansary. And they would have compassion for the fears of Alex Ansary. Okay? And so if women want to act like, even though there's no men of my heritage or a combination of my heritage, part Austrian, English, Welsh, Germanic, and then East Indian and Afghani on the other side, there's no one like me in the American Truth Movement. So you can't compare me to Dabu 7. You can't compare me to Richie from Boston. You can't compare me to Alex Jones. You can't compare me to David Icke. If you're white, and in some cases black, but primarily white, and you're in the mainstream conspiracy movement, and you're telling lies to your tribe, lies, fake news, pro-Russia, flat earth, telling people that Pepsi Cola has put aborted baby cells in the soda. Like, I have the gift of discernment. I have a natural, God-given bullshit detector. And so I have told you, ladies and gentlemen, the truth. And I've never engaged in false prophecy. I did think that it was possible that we could have faced large solar flares a decade ago, but I didn't run around with many, many, many other predictions and say that this person is the Antichrist, like Clyde Lewis has with Prince Charles. I haven't given you fake prophecy dates of the world ending in 2011 or 2012 like many Christians have, even though they say that no man knows the day or the hour, but their flock does not hold them accountable because they're tribalists. If we were not in a reality in which the dark feminine is rising, women of all heritages would hear my cry and they would bypass the AI algorithm and the AI mind control and the social media mind control and the fake news mind control, and they would come to my aid. They would be in the audience. They would comment in the comment section, and they would not be so easily susceptible to demonic mind control. And so I will say this, humanity has a chance of restoring healthy human relationships if the grid goes away and we are restored to a natural balance. But it's not going to be a graceful experience. It's going to be a rough and violent experience. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to perish. But here's something that you need to know. This is not the real world. We are controlled in the flesh by our fear of death. That's not to say that you should go out there and run into situations in which you might get killed. It's that this is not the real world. This is not the only world that there is. And instead of viewing someone that's preparing for the hereafter as a radical extremist, which Fox News is doing, they'll sit there and go, these people, these Muslims, they're more concerned with the hereafter than this world. When I heard them say that last week, I knew that there were demons speaking through those anchors, because we do need to prepare for the afterlife. But the way the radical Muslims are going around it is the wrong way. But many Christians should be preparing for the afterlife. It's not about the pleasure in the flesh, because I know for a fact that if you're a man or a woman and you're of Afghani heritage or you're white or you're black, if you choose to serve evil, Satan will not only provide for you financially and give to you your carnal desires, certain harms will be kept away from you in the flesh. And so people are led into this mentality that they don't have to be good people, that there is no karma because they still have high-paying jobs. All their teeth haven't fallen out yet. They still have mates that they're having wacky wild sex with. They're still hopping from human to human to human to human, whether they be male or female. Because a lot of people end up with sex demons that want more, more, more. How do you like it? How do you like it? More, more, more. It's just amazing how much of the songs that are embedded within our culture are hardcore lustful. I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other ones can't deny. Like, I mean, seriously, like, what? I'm gonna run to you. Yeah, I'm gonna run to you. Super freak. She's super freaky. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Super freak. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Super freak. But, you know, there's no replacement for a good old... It's going to take a lot of love to change the way things are. So if you are out there waiting, I hope you show up soon. My heart needs protection, and so do I. There's the Alex Ansary non-karaoke version of Nicolette Larson, A Lot of Love, one of my favorite songs of all time. Next to Sarah by Fleetwood Mac and Gypsy, and You Make Loving Fun, and Dreams. Next to Pink Floyd's Empty Spaces, Run Like Hell, Comfortably Numb. Next to Queensryche, Is There Anybody Out There? Next to Billy Idol's Eyes Without a Face. Next to Human League, I'm Only Human. Next to Madonna's, yes, Madonna's Live to Tell. See, I like music that has soul in it. Next to Alan Parsons Project, Eye in the Sky. Next to Megadeth's This Was My Life. Elysian Fields, right? The lyrics go, Uneasy Feelings, Burning Out My Eyes. I hope the end is less painful than my life. I stand on trial before the gods on Judgment Day. A blink of an eye between the cradle and the grave. One last look of visions of flesh. The last best hope for man on earth. And so on and so forth. I like music with a message. I like music with soul. But yet you can find many of these modern humans into death metal, into gangster rap, in which women are talked about like bitches and hoes, and women go along with it. And as I said many years ago, why are there more women engaged in the porn industry and now OnlyFans, showing that I was prophetically right about so many things? Why are there more women involved in the sex industry and stripping and pornography and OnlyFans that involve themselves in the real truth movement, which is not the same thing as what a lot of these women are doing, getting involved in hating Jews and getting involved in the white genocide mythos. I talk to you on a regular basis about the real racism, the real anti-white racism, weaponized immigration, as some call it. I will use that word because it is weaponized, because they want you to rise up. They want white people to rise up. And even if the left wing hasn't risen up in violence and open white supremacy verbally with their mouths like the right wing has towards people of my background, they sat there and said Afghan lives matter. But they ignore the atrocities in Afghanistan, and they ignore how the 9/11 event, even though I'm an American and I'm not Muslim, and I'm not an immigrant, how the 9/11 event has affected how many, many women have seen me, how the bombardment of news that they get about women being raped by some immigrants, or the propaganda about all migrants being rapists, there is no doubt in my mind that that has influenced some white women to fear me. And so all the people that I've been with physically in the past have been white women, which is the ethnicity of my mother. And while that's fine and dandy, there hasn't been a real genuine compassion from these white women for my soul. There hasn't been an appreciation from these women for the content that I've created, for I never hear from them or hear anything complimentary about the work that I am involved in. And this is ironic, since Maria, who visited me twice from the country known as Australia, got involved in the 9/11 truth movement. So there's a lot of women that like conspiracy theories. There's a lot of women that will listen to people talk about human trafficking, like Tim Ballard, and watch the movie Sound of Freedom. But because of the ethnocentric, xenophobic, white supremacist attitude in our society, even on the left, they subconsciously, automatically will view my content as less valuable. One individual actually asked me what my numbers were, which, to be honest to you, wasn't the best sign. What do you mean, what are my numbers? If you're asking me if I'm popular with mainstream society, and if you're going to be popular by telling people that you're associated with me, brother, you're asking the wrong questions. Because it's not about my numbers. And I do not go out of my way to post my content in conspiracy circle groups, even if that will bring me more numbers, and even if I could increase my donations from $100 a month, which it is right now, or $100 in the last week and a half, since I have made my PayPal link available for the first time in years. Even though I can make a lot more money in donations on my main YouTube channel, a lot of those women, a lot of those men are admittedly on the dark side of conspiracy theory, and the dark side of the controlled left, where they will say that Black Lives Matter, they will say, stop killing Black people, but they will not say, including my father's family, stop killing Afghans. And if they do show that they are upset about what has happened in Afghanistan, they are certainly not showing themselves to be conscious enough that it's not just Donald Trump that's the issue. It's Barack Obama. It's the Clintons. It's George W. Bush. And so even if they're pro-refugee and pro-immigrant, and I'm not necessarily anti-refugee or anti-immigrant, but I see through the fake love and light of the left. And I know that the left is not truly pro-immigrant or refugee. And I demonstrate that. Because if they were, when I shared with them in Portland what I had been through, somebody would have helped me get a job as a janitor or a dishwasher. Because folks, not only am I a fast talker, I'm a hard worker. I sweep floors fast. I mop floors fast. I stock groceries fast. I bust tables and take off the dirty plates and pour water and change the dirty white linen to the clean white linen fast. But the truth is, even if some people claim to know about the supernatural, many of them don't know that the vast majority of humans are being manipulated by demonic forces. And so I, as a true light being, who aspires to be one of the 144,000 in a world of zombies, even if they're in the church, even if they have their own churches, many of them are not one of the 144,000. Many of them are going to be recycled back in this reality. And so as I try to spread my light and speak out against the multiple forms of racism towards all the groups on the earth and the genocides and what's coming to white women in the future, which no white man in the alternative media is warning you about, because they don't have the understanding that I do, even though they view themselves as superior, while also seeing themselves as the number one victims. as the number one targeted class. No, no, no. The people of the Middle East are the targeted collective. And by importing many of them in mass into the Western world, while there is hateful propaganda against them on social media, in my opinion, they're being set up for a dangerous future America, where they might even be put into camps or expelled into foreign lands. Even my father put on Facebook in 2016 that he was afraid that his family was going to be rounded up in the event that Trump was elected and to be sent to the Nevada desert to a concentration camp to burn under the hot sun. And so when I see these articles now about the U.S. testing weapons of war, contaminating the Nevada desert with uranium, with radiation, with God knows what else, I remember what he said. While when I confront him on what he said, he will not reply to me. So, as I said, I am a hard worker. And when I worked for years in Portland, Oregon, I was not allowed to ever be promoted. They promoted white people, black people, and Latinos at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. And so even though women have been oppressed by men over the years, and they are now catching up with men in many ways, we are seeing in left-leaning cities white woman supremacy, where white women will be given certain jobs and short or brown men that are stereotyped based on our ethnicity. Even though I stand up for women, we are not given housing. We are not given shelter. No one speaks up for us. No one says, hey, this Alex Ansary is a good man. He's warned about human trafficking. He doesn't believe in owning women. He doesn't believe in multiple wives. And he speaks out against the abuse of his father and abusive aspects of his father's culture. But yet it is Alex Ansary who suffers with no family members in his corner. Yet the abusive father who does beat women, who is a bad Muslim, he has the love and admiration of many Ansary relatives. And I'm telling you, that is wrong. That is a sign of a world that has fallen into Satanism, Luciferianism. And so there's no excuse, in my opinion, for the women of Portland, Oregon to not remember me, to not care about me. One woman who called herself Angel, beware of those that call themselves Angel, who are anything but. She defriended me when I criticized Portland's callous nature on Facebook when I returned to it, when I returned to the city of my birth in 2014. Later on, she got involved in the welfare state, doling out taxpayer money to people that are approved by the state to be in receivership of that free money or free housing. So she will say on her Facebook page, housing is a human right. Housing is healthcare. Where was she when I needed housing? Not that she can give me housing, but you could have at least said something on her social media page or showed me some compassion. And so this was a woman, stay with me here, who used to watch my show every week, who used to come to my meetups. And I'm being honest with you, even though Alex Ansary was younger then, and I may have been more attractive then, and I may have worn a suit then, and I wasn't homeless then, and I was less traumatized then, and I had more confidence then, the older Alex Ansary, the one that you're listening now, has purged a lot of his demons. The one that you're listening to now, who's experienced homelessness, who doesn't consume cannabis anymore because he can't afford it, so I've just overcome that. And I do pray to Jesus, but not a religious Jesus, but a mystical, spiritual, Gnostic Jesus, although I do read the Bible more than Gnostic texts, and I don't currently talk to any practicing Gnostics because they've shown themselves to not really be receptive to my message. So we have Christians like Scott commenting with support on my Substack page, alexansary.substack.com, but you can't see anybody else nor any woman in the comment section. And I'm telling you, folks, that's not normal. In 2010, in Portland, Oregon, by the Skidmore Fountain, I believe it's the Mercy Corps building, unless they sold it, right? But it was the Mercy Corps building. I and an old friend named David, who later got into flat earth, so he stopped being my friend because I got into talking about the solar flares, but that's another discussion, how flat earth psychology has damaged my relationship with certain people in this world that have been taken over by the spirit of disinformation. And so David and I went down to share our experience and what we knew about human trafficking and why it would get worse. And they hated us, and especially me, for being in a room full of mostly white women that were basically blaming all men in general for human trafficking. Instead of acknowledging the role that women play, right? There are women that get involved in human trafficking. It's not just the spouse of the late Epstein. Right? You've heard about Epstein. You hear about him all the time. So you know who I'm talking about. I believe her last name is Maxwell. There are many women like her that have worked within the human trafficking mafias and organizations. There are many women that are used to abduct women and to lure them into cars. And even if they have been violated themselves, it's still not an excuse for them to carry on the abuse. Just like it's not an excuse for my father, who was beat up in Kabul, Afghanistan by his father, put into a trash bag, and then dumped at the Kabul police station. And then he left, took off, and had the privilege, he had the privilege to come to America to get a higher education and be loved by the white counterculture, just like Tamim Ansary. And so my father thought at the age of 16, when I turned 16, and I got poor grades in school after he and my mother moved me around to 6 high schools in a single calendar year or two, which you do not likely go through, which the vast majority of children do not go through. They end up with a stable childhood, and they're able to get good grades and in some cases develop career goals and then get involved in higher education. That was not there for me. And so when I was 16 years old and I got bad grades and I was living with my father, being abused by him and his psychopathic Afghani family, including Basir Ansary and his psychotic wife, Nabila Ansary, who straight up looks like she is possessed by the devil. Nabila Ansary, right? That is an evil, evil woman. And Basir is an evil, evil man. He thought that he would try to take me and drop me off at juvie, at juvenile hall, in and around Springfield, Virginia. And a shout out to Travis if you're out there. He found me, and he appreciated the fact that I talked about living in Springfield, Virginia, and that's right outside of Washington, D.C. in the 1996 time period. And so that was an experience that was not normal. And so here's my father, who has a master's degree, who talks about the value of higher education. Yet this borderline backwater immigrant who's taken the worst of his culture and the worst of the American culture, including pornography, alcoholism, military worship, and football. This guy who's out of shape, who couldn't do a few push-ups if his life depended on it, will sit there, drink alcohol, and cheer on giant steroid-taking, big black guys, big white guys, throwing around the pigskin, and have the gall to put me down for trying to work out when I was a young man. You got to understand there's a lot of people in our world, a lot of men and women that are on the dark side. So let's go back to the masculine and feminine. Just because you may have a vagina does not mean that you do not have a inner masculine that you need to tap into, that does protect the weak, that does protect the women, that does want to see women protected, that does want to see good men protected. And just because you have a penis as a man, that does not mean that you do not have a sacred feminine within that you may be suppressing. A feminine that loves, a feminine that nurtures, a feminine who likes to cuddle with his or her cat as if that cat is your baby. When I hold my cat in my arms, it's like the child I have never, ever had. And never, ever will. Because I will not have a child in this world unless I and another woman are madly in love with each other. And now that I'm pushing 44, the chances of me meeting a wonderful woman are less than likely because the consciousness on this planet is almost non-existent. And we live right now, by the way, in the day and age in which in many places in North America, although I'm not a big proponent that there should be bikes everywhere, I'm not into bike supremacy like many Portlanders are. I am into walker supremacy. Not 50-minute cities though, but the idea of being able to walk in your off-grid environment and not be harmed by your locals, and to be able to walk in a suburban environment and a urban environment and to have sidewalks. And there's many, many places still in this country, whether it be New York, Oregon, Washington, Texas, California, Colorado, Idaho. There's many, many places in this world in which they do not have sidewalks. And anybody truly tapped into their inner masculine and feminine would have the wisdom to realize that we shouldn't just become machines. A lot of people have become machines. They don't want to be tracked, allegedly, by microchip in the vaccine. But yet they'll sit there and consume all their content on a smartphone and be tracked by their smartphone and be manipulated by the entities in their smartphone. And so people that are truly tapped into their inner masculine and feminine, that are not suppressing it, that are bringing it into their lives, they would not just enter into this transhumanistic reality in which we all get in these giant cars and we go down the road at 60 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour on our smartphones and then acting like we're awake human beings when we have been taken away from the family structure and we have been taken away from the farm. And so, when it comes to my life and the death of the farm story of 1993, had my grandfather, M.W. Nagel of Aurora, Oregon, who created Nagel's floor covering, which still stands there to this day, right? Had he not cheated on my grandmother, there would have never been the sale of the farm. And we, the descendants of this great M.W. Nagel, who fought in World War II, who was a pilot, who was a carpenter, who was a landlord, who benefited from World War II, and the money that was given to white Americans as opposed to black Americans, right? He had his own privilege from being alive in the post-World War II era. But that did not stop his grandchildren. Anna Nagel of Lincoln City, Oregon. David Nagel of Alaska, who died fleeing the police after he had 80 tickets, doing 130 miles an hour, hitting a moose and dying instantly. Or Sean Nagel, who looks like Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan. Who spent time in the joint for beating the living shit out of somebody with his gang. People want to act like my mother's side of the family is superior. When you take a closer look at them, they got way more demons apparently than my father's side, just so you're aware. And I'm telling you, even though my grandfather had so much, my grandfather and his ancestors and my grandmother's ancestors of the KKK in the Order of the Eastern Star, who knows what curses have come through. And so don't think that your bloodlines are innocent either. Many of your ancestors, as many of you are white, 95 to 99% of the audience is white. You know that there is KKK ancestry, that there's Freemason ancestry, that there's brutality in the church in old Europe. You know that's the truth. You cannot just blame your fingers at the Afghani people for all the world's problems, for your own domestic violence, for your own drug addiction, for your own meth addictions. The Muslims are not bringing your community methamphetamines. No, it's people like Uncle Bruce, who cooked prope dope on old Grandpa Bill's property, that helped bring demons to the Aurora, Oregon household, along with my mother and her worship of the fallen angels, who she falsely identified to be the ascended masters of the Galactic Federation of Light, Ashtar Command. Bullshit. We are in the day and age of the dark feminine rising. This is not misogyny. This is calling out the dark feminine within the men also. That is the human beings that are amongst us who have penises and testicles also. They also suffer from the dark feminine complex. I don't know what percentage of the listeners here are going to even understand the English words that I just said, but if you're listening to this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on Substack, not only should you be commenting on every single podcast, you should be hearting the Substack posts, you should be sharing them with the right people, and you should know the truth as to why you see zero evidence of modern human females supporting my work, not liking a few posts on Facebook. I'm talking about commenting on the actual Substack posts. Because I think that it's easy for a lot of women to like a few links if they even do that. And a lot of them, they end up just going away after a while. And what I'm telling you is that if we are to become a more conscious society, my warnings to women and men about the things that are to come and the things that are happening now to people around the world, they would not be ignored. They would be participating. But when we look at other men in the alternative media, if we look at black men, if we look at white men, I can show you a countless number of women from multiple ethnicities giving them and providing to them plenty of comments and plenty of support. And so you should be intelligent enough, if you speak English, to understand that I am of a bloodline that's being exterminated and demonized and marked for dead. So I'm unlike W7, I'm unlike Alex Jones, I'm unlike David Icke. I don't have the same past that they do, and I don't have the same past that black men have in our society. And so women of my mother's ancestry cannot be seen in mass supporting my work, and women of my father's ancestry cannot be seen supporting my work. And I am not fully of their bloodline. I am mixed. So don't think that this white supremacy epidemic is solely coming from white right-wing men that voted for Trump. They are not people that I'm fans of, but they are in the audience. The question is, if I'm speaking out against racism, where are the supposed anti-racist leftists? If I'm speaking out against genocide in Afghanistan, where are the female Ansary audience members? If I'm speaking out against white slavery coming to white women in the event that we're occupied by China and Russia, where are the white women saying, "Way to go, Alex, keep it up," in the comment sections? So I woke up, ladies and gentlemen, today out of bed at 4:30 in the morning to deliver this sermon to you. If you would like to contribute financially to that which I'm doing, there is a PayPal option down below. And like I said, it appears that I will be returning to Portland cable access, even though I'm not living in Portland, using the power of the internet, right? You are in the day and age of the internet, folks, just to remind you, right? You're listening now to this over the internet. So it's through the internet that I'm working with an individual who is going to be taking my show and making it available to the people of Portland. But I'm not going to sit there and ask for their financial support or to engage in commercials or calling for violence or engaging in fake news, right? These concerns were brought up to me by this individual, and that's fine. But anybody that takes the time to look into me Anybody who's truly intuitive and spiritual that takes the time to listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth, they realize that I stand against many of those unconscious behaviors. And I'm here to help people because I'm trying to set my own soul free. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a few months. I'm going to speak directly to the people of Portland and cover national news and cover spiritual topics, but I'm not going to do it with a false belief that the people of Portland are going to start supporting me, start loving me, or inviting me to the state of Oregon or the city of Portland, Oregon, so that I can be amongst a tribe or community of people that will accept me, right? I'm not going to have that selfish, self-serving motivation. Rather, I'm going to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, including the reality of left-leaning white supremacy, including from the women there, that they will not acknowledge. Because they need to understand that we are not on our way to 5D. We are not on our way to ascension. It's more like that song from AC/DC, we're on a highway to hell. And I'm here to save as many souls as possible in the limited time in which I will be remaining in the flesh. For now, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.